Then, Mr. Larry, if you wish to have me consider anything else, now is your opportunity. And just try to use that microphone so we can hear you, okay?
Yeah. I want to start off by saying I'm sorry to the victims, family, and the cause of their death of their family member. I'm sorry for all my actions that took in this place and in this courtroom. I don't really know what to say. I done lost a lot of my family members in crossfire, so I know how I feel, and I'm gonna take responsibility for everything that's in this case. And I just want to say sorry to my family and to their family. Hope everybody could forgive me or what my actions took. And that's it.
It's a plethora of some of the most serious charges anyone could be facing. Not only did people die, or a person died, multiple people were injured, multiple people were put at risk of losing their life or otherwise being seriously injured. Attorney Tony referenced, I think for the first time today, I don't believe there was a reference to it other than in passing or if anyone was paying attention to the video that was played. The little boy, don't know how old he is, looks maybe 5 or 6, takes his little scooter, he's just out, looks like having a good time. As he's riding that scooter, he rides it directly under the shooting from Mr. Johnston and Mr. Larry. There's a lot of talk, and I'll circle back to this as it relates to Mr. Larry, of people becoming products of their environment. That little boy should not have to grow up thinking that type of behavior, that risk, these circumstances are in any way, shape, or form normal, because they're not. There aren't any charges as it relates to that little boy. I bring it up because it shows the seriousness of what took place here. It also shows quite clearly the concern for public safety that accompanies these charges that this court has. So when it comes to gravity of the offense, it can't get more grave than that. Now, looking at the character of Mr. Larry, he's very young. I cannot deny that. 14, I believe, when these circumstances took place. This court presided not only over the trial, but also that reverse waiver hearing. I remember both sets of proceedings. There is no doubt that the science referenced by Attorney Mogren is accurate. It matches with common sense. Anybody who may have a child, you recognize that that child's brain continues to evolve, to develop as time passes, as they gain more experience. So as Mr. Larry sits here, I have no doubt that he is continuing to learn, and his brain is continuing to develop, and he may very well be a different person 5 years from now. I think generally speaking, the research tends to show till about age 25, and even then, obviously, we all continue to learn from those experiences. So he's young. He has educational difficulties, as noted by the IEP and the ADHD. He does not have any criminal history. He does not have any juvenile history. I think there were some references to some citations, getting in some trouble at school, but nothing else that would show a pattern of this type of behavior. While that history is lacking, what's not is some of the evidence of behavior that he engaged in prior to the circumstances of May 7th. There was reference to, in the PSI, I think Attorney Tony hit on some of that today during the trial and the reverse waiver hearing. Mr. Larry had a significant number of concerning social media posts. Posts that involved a large amount of guns, some with extended magazines. The video that was played, that live feed, as I've already referenced, you hear him make threats to Mr. Johnson, and you hear him talk about going pipe for pipe. Even in the PSI, he acknowledges and talks about how his dad is his twin, I think to his dad's dismay. The PSI referenced that his dad did not want that life for Mr. Larry and tried to discourage any type of gang-banging activity. It's not my phrase, it's the phrase used in the PSI. But it references statements from Mr. Larry indicating he believed that life to be glamorous. Just pulling that out so that I don't misspeak. He felt he got to know his father and said, "That is my twin right now." He would look up to his father and cousins and always saw himself getting into those things. He was able to provide an example of him throwing up gang signs at his father, but his father did not want him to be like him. He says his father did the same thing, and gang banging with cousins a little bit, and the life of gangs and drugs was glamorous. His father used to punch him a few times and would tell him to stop doing things, but then felt his father gave up on him about it. He said his father did not discipline other than not liking him gang banging and swearing. He said he and father, I think it meant to be his father, were both not able to be controlled. Certainly a concerning statement. It's one that can be viewed a few ways. It's dangerous. Shows someone that is on a path to making many poor choices in life. Or can it be chalked up to youth and immaturity? So I fully recognize and appreciate the fact that Mr. Larry is very young. But those additional circumstances can't be ignored either. There were statements that were made that, well, when gunfire broke out, these were the circumstances. He essentially, based on his immaturity and his lack of development, fired back, right? He wasn't able, in the heat of the moment, to make the right choice that perhaps an adult could make. But as to that point, I agree with the state that this is not the only circumstance that the court's looking at in a vacuum. The issue of self-defense was put before the jury. They clearly did not find that defense appropriate, as they did convict Mr. Larry. If this was a circumstance where there was not prior action and he still happened to be guilty of possessing a firearm as a juvenile and had a gun on him, and circumstances just erupted and he acted, that'd be a different set of circumstances than the circumstances before the court today. The shooting itself is certainly something the court looks at, but I don't look at it in a vacuum. Mr. Larry had these engagements trying, it appeared, to provoke some type of altercation with Mr. Johnson. He has these videos, these posts, in an attempt apparently either to brag to his friends. Again, it can be a sign of youth and stupidity. But it also shows that the circumstances of May 5th did not erupt of their own accord. There was some type of disagreement. And looking back, I presume everyone involved in these circumstances would consider it to be trivial. Whether it was a piece of jewelry, a chain, a piece of materiality that people were fighting over, or whether that chain meant something to someone. Whether it stood for something different, that I don't know. But there was testimony, there's certainly significant evidence that the beef that existed had to do with this chain. As there's a verbal altercation that starts taking place, it appears on May 7th that Mr. Johnston attempts to be the tough guy, indicates that you're not going to pick on little Parise here, he's younger, you can pick on me. He pulls out his firearm, has it at his side. As additional steps are taken toward him, we don't have the benefit of that audio, but we see steps continue to be taken forward. I believe Mr. Johnston had testified that he indicated to Mr. Johnson that if he took any more steps forward, he would force his hand. Mr. Johnston fired first. It appears Mr. Larry in short accord after that, and Mr. Johnson gets off a round. All of this puts everyone else in that parking lot and people not in the parking lot, like Mr. Rosario Rodriguez, who's sleeping in his home, at risk. So I can't say that these circumstances are just one of a bad decision made by a young kid under circumstances that were incredibly stressful. It's a piece of it. It's not the entire story. I also am taking into consideration the argument made by Attorney Mogren as it relates to the facts and circumstances that were Parise Larry's life. It goes into what makes him him. So they are things that the court factors in as far as his character goes. But I'm not willing to chalk everything up to Mr. Larry being a product of his environment. That's why I had those follow-up questions. Because he had and still has a lot of things going for him. I can't think of a single individual, a single child who has the picture-perfect life. And I don't presume to be in a circumstance or a situation where I can put myself in Mr. Larry's shoes. It would be disingenuous to suggest that I could. But chalking everything up to one being a product of their environment and choices being forced upon him, I think that does a disservice to the many young men who put in the time and the effort not to surround themselves with individuals who may be leading them down the wrong path, who put forth their talents in school, who make the decision not to be another statistic. Certainly there are things in Mr. Larry's life, he wasn't surrounded by the right types of people. But you could see by some of those prior videos, he certainly was making a lot of his own poor decisions well in advance of May 7th. So it's a factor that is part of an explanation as to how he came to be the person that he is, and perhaps how he came to be in these circumstances. But it's not an excuse. I think there's been a lot that I've heard as far as remorse goes. I think the facts that were pointed out by the PSI writer, which is in part why I referenced that, Those are facts. Mr. Larry did flee the scene. He did not call 911 to my knowledge. He did toss the gun in the garbage can at the Tyson Middle School, did flee, but he also did then turn himself in. So certainly some things that the court views more in a negative light, some positive character traits. The fact that he came and turned himself in certainly speaks in favor of some positive character and some good choices that he was able to make. But there are individuals who believe he's shown zero remorse for what's happened. I've read that in victim impact statements. I've heard that in the courtroom. I've also heard the opposite, that members of Mr. Larry's family, people close to him, believe that he is truly remorseful and have seen a real change in him. It's unclear to me whether he has been able to fully digest these circumstances such that he could show true remorse at this point in time. But I heard his statements today. He's indicating that he's remorseful. He's made an apology. I will leave it up to those in the courtroom who feel it necessary to have that validation, to interpret it as they will. I will take his words at their meaning and him at his word as he sits here today. So looking at the seriousness of the crime, as I've indicated, as serious as it gets, the character of Mr. Larry, we've got some things working in his favor, some things working against it. And looking at public safety, I think I don't hear there being a significant disagreement of how much these types of circumstances give the court cause for public safety. I think the issue is looking at a sentence, whether or not in the future we're able to address any rehabilitative needs for Mr. Larry such that that can quell the court's concern for public safety. Is this going to happen again? Is he going to harm anyone else? It's always easier said if hindsight's 20/20. I don't know that as I sit here today. What I know is he is a young man who engaged in very risky behavior, who engaged in behavior that took the life of another individual and seriously injured multiple other individuals. And since that time, I would say it is concerning as well, the information that was listed in the PSI that the state pointed out, that he's continuing to engage in assaultive type behavior. Again, is that a product of his youth? Or is it a fundamental product of his character such that it gives the court additional concern for public safety? I think it's a little bit of both. So no doubt that the decision before the court is a serious one. It's not one I take lightly. It's a decision that will sit with me for the rest of my life. It is my job to evaluate those factors, look at the circumstances before the court, the evidence that I've heard come in, the background that has been able to be provided to me as it relates to the defendant and the various individuals involved in these circumstances. Weigh those in a way that balances those factors into a just sentence, one that is not any more serious than it needs to be. All right, I'm going to start diving in as it relates to the court sentence. And as to count 9, the court is going to order life imprisonment without the possibility of extended supervision. And that will run The other counts that the court identified consecutive to each other, all of them will run concurrent to count 9. Mr. Johnston, and as your attorney apparently talked through with you, you don't have to make a statement, but if you wish to do so, now is your opportunity to let me know anything else that you'd like me to consider before I impose sentence today.
To speak now?
Now is that opportunity, yes. Just try to, if we could, make sure you try to use that microphone so I can hear you.
Yes,
okay?
ma'am. First, I just want to say thank you, Your Honorable Judge Levy, for allowing me to address the court on my behalf. And as you may see, my family is not here in person to give a verbal statement on my behalf, but I just want to say first, I want to give my deepest and sincere condolences to the entire Zech family or anybody else that has been harmed, and that includes friends, family, distant friends, everyone who has been harmed in any type of way, shape, or form by this tragedy that occurred on May 7, 2023. I am so very sorry. I never intended to harm Tatyanna Zech, and I'm so sorry that she has lost her life. I know that I have never met her, but from what I have read from the victim's mother and sister and friends, that she was a wonderful person, that she, as was earlier stated, that she was a wonderful hairstylist and she was a very heartfelt person. I just want to give my deepest condolences to the entire Zech family. I am so very sorry that my actions led to Tatyanna losing her life. I also would like to state that I am very sorry to the Fond du Lac community for acting so recklessly and not thinking. Me being 17 years old, I have been through trials and tribulations in my life, and I have been put in situations where I had to think, and that situation that occurred on May 7th was one of those situations that I should have thought and proceeded with my day, but my actions showed otherwise, and that is why I'm here in front of you today, Your Honorable Judge Levy. I really want you to take into consideration that I've entered those guilty pleas. I have took the stand against my co-defendant. I admitted my guilt, and I am so very sorry to the community and to the entire Zech family and anybody else who has been affected by this tragedy. They're not the only ones that have been affected. My life has been affected. Parise Larry life has been affected. Also his family and mine.
You can take a moment. You have the floor until you tell me you're done.
I'm sorry. I'm not here in front of you with a piece of paper that everything could be fabricated about. I am speaking genuinely from the heart, and I understand that you have a job to do today. I just hope that you could be lenient enough and allow me to be released at or after the 20-year mark. I know you don't have any obligations to do so, but I really assure you that the time being spent in the Fond du Lac County Jail and my future would be in any prison or maximum facility, that I will be well rehabilitated and that I will grow as a man, and I am learning and I have learned from my mistakes. I want to end by saying this. I want to thank you again, Your Honorable Judge Levy, for allowing me to address the court on my behalf and giving my deepest condolences to the entire Zech family and everybody else who has been affected. And I am so very sorry. And I just beg you, please just give me another chance to show that I am worth it and that I am not a disgrace to society and I am not a menace to society, that after the time that I will have been served or being served, I will be well rehabilitated enough to come back into society and be a normal and respected citizen. I do have ties to Fond du Lac. I have a mother. I have a child. I have siblings. I have nieces and nephews that is here. And I'm just not ready to just be taken away from them just forever. I understand that I have to be rehabilitated for my actions, and I am admitting guilt. I have admitted guilt, and I'm sorry for that, but please just know that I am sorry from the bottom to the top of my heart of my actions that I have did on May 7th of 2023. And I just hope that the entire Zech family and everybody else that has been harmed in any type of way, shape, or form could someday forgive me, even though I know Tatyanna Zech would never be able to be held by them when she cries, or be comforted by someone when they're down, or speak to again. I'm sorry for that. And I know sorry's not going to bring Tatyanna back. I know sorry's not going to pay the price that needs to be paid. I know me asking for forgiveness isn't going to come with overnight. And I know justice needs to be brought forth so that Tatyanna's life being taken away from her has been brought to justice. Thank you, Your Honor, for allowing me to address the court on my behalf. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnston. I'm not aware of that prior history as it relates to Mr. Johnston. However, there are separate aggravating circumstances that the court takes into consideration as it relates to Mr. Johnston's involvement in these circumstances. One, he pulled that firearm first. He had it down at his side. He's the one who fired first. He fired 10 rounds to Mr. Larry's 3, to Mr. Johnston's 1. Certainly, those are more aggravating circumstances than what Mr. Larry did, what Mr. Johnston did even. He then fled on foot, took off with Mr. Larry and another individual, dropped the gun in the garbage can by Tyson Middle School, and fled the state. Attorney Sings pointed out some various ways that one could view that fleeing, whether it's going home to seek support and solace, whether it's trying to evade capture. I think the fact that he took off certainly showed some level of recognition that what he did was wrong. What he did was against the law. As Attorney Singh pointed out, I don't believe there was any evidence at the trial or otherwise that the actions of Mr. Johnston were premeditated in any way. So I take that as a mitigating factor in looking at the gravity of the offense. Gravity of the offense necessarily under these types of circumstances dovetails into public safety issues that the court needs to consider. Attorney Tony referenced these circumstances today. He referenced them this morning. The court referenced them this morning. It's something that I noted from the very get-go the first time that I saw the video of this shooting. I didn't hear the preliminary hearing, so I had not seen that video until the trial. You have Mr. Johnston standing outside the doorway. He raises his arm to shoot at the group of individuals. You have Mr. Larry shooting from the doorway. There's other people that are in the parking lot. There's people in the apartments across the way. And then you have this little 5, 6-year-old boy that scoots by on his scooter right underneath the fire, the gunfire. Whether by virtue of sheer dumb luck or the grace of God, that little boy wasn't harmed. But I point that out because it is a clear, tangible circumstance that shows how dangerous these circumstances were. And that factors into the court's consideration of not only the public safety as it relates to this crime, but I also need to look at public safety in the future. And that dovetails into looking at the character of Mr. Johnston as to whether, based on the sentence structure put in place, based on the opportunities that may or may not be made available to him, that will he take advantage of them? Is he going to put others at risk in the future? Clearly, the behavior that happened here, the circumstances here, put many people at risk. Far more people than charges were brought in this case, because there was no charge associated with that little boy. And the people that suffered direct injuries or were part of that group taking out the garbage were not made identified victims in this case, but certainly were put at risk by the behavior and the actions of Mr. Johnston. In looking at the character of Mr. Johnston, I'll start by acknowledging that he too is incredibly young. 17 at the time, 19 now. He has not, I believe, have any prior criminal history, no prior juvenile history. Certainly that speaks to his favor. What doesn't are the conduct reports that Attorney Tony had referenced that are referenced in the PSI. Some of those do give the court concern as they reference a continued assaultive type behavior. This isn't just failing to follow the rules of the jail and you're getting written up. One references that he was throwing fist strikes with a closed fist to the other inmate's face and head area, continued fighting the other person at least 12 times. That was from circumstances in September of last year. Then from February of this year, getting into a fight again, striking another inmate at least 11 times with a closed fist. It states he then dragged them under the staircase and again attacked them, hitting in the head with a closed fist at least 5 times. Another reference from May 12th of this year. What started, it seems, as exchanging words, it says, with another inmate. It says he then struck the other inmate in the head with a closed fist. Now, I recognize the circumstances that Attorney Singh pointed out, and that is fair argument for the court to consider. But certainly what's before the court is very violent, assaultive type crimes, and I'm looking at how one conducts themselves so that I can have an understanding, as best I can glean, as to how they will take advantage of opportunities made available to them, how they will utilize their time in confinement, and whether or not that type of behavior is going to continue into the future. And so certainly looking at those circumstances does give the court some concern. Now, a lot has been talked about from both parties here as it relates to Mr. Johnston's character and his taking responsibility in this case. I give him credit for that. Absolutely. As Attorney Singh phrased it, I'm not certain I would phrase it the same. He indicated that Mr. Johnston stood up for Ms. Zech. Again, I'm not certain I agree with that phraseology. He certainly, after the fact, looked at his behavior and took ownership of that behavior. He entered guilty pleas acknowledging that behavior, which meant a trial did not need to happen. So as far as manning up and owning one's behavior, I do give you credit for that, Mr. Johnston. It's not often that this court sees that. And it was done in a manner that shows genuineness. I have no reason to doubt. I certainly believe Attorney Singh and take him at his word that those statements were made to Attorney Singh very early on in this case. For Attorney Singh to do his job, he certainly needed to review that discovery. The procedures as it relates to the court process needed to continue. So it's my understanding and my belief that you wished to take ownership for your behavior and these crimes from a very early time in this case, and I give you credit for that. It did spare some additional pain that victims' families would need to go through if this matter also went to a trial. And I do think, and agree with Attorney Singh, that the combination of that with some of the statements that Attorney Singh had referenced in his arguments show that you do have some certain level of insight into the seriousness of what happened here, the impact of that, not only on yourself, but on the lives of the other people that that's impacted. Certainly, I think there is more for you to learn as you will, as you continue to grow and frankly get more experience in life. But it does show a certain level of accountability, and I do give you credit for that. What credit can't do, what taking responsibility can't provide, is taking it all away. We can't turn back time, right? We can't bring Ms. Zech back. We can't take the bullet out of Javier's back. We can't take away the injuries that Keyshawn has suffered. Those are things that the victims and their families will need to continue to deal with day in and day out for the rest of their lives. And you will need to deal with your understanding and your role in these circumstances day in and day out for the rest of your life. I don't envy either of those positions, but I too have a very important role in these circumstances, and the decision that this court makes is one that I do not take lightly. It is one that I will live with day in and day out for the rest of my life. I take my role seriously. And the sentence that the court imposes is one that I do not make lightly. I make considering all of these facts and circumstances, weighing those as I must through the light of those galleon factors to provide as best I can a just sentence that factors all of those things into account. As it relates to count 1, the court is going to order life imprisonment without the possibility of extended supervision. I recognize that that is not what the state is requesting. I recognize it is not what the defense is requesting. The court is required to sentence in a manner that provides a minimal amount of incarceration to the extent that is necessary. I do find that life imprisonment without any opportunity at extended supervision is necessary here. It's necessary to address the seriousness of these offenses. I do find that term of imprisonment is the minimum necessary to address the seriousness of these offenses and what has taken place.